And we are live for the Steelers Depot live stream here on Monday, June 27th. As always, I am Alex Kozora, joined by Dave Bryan as promised. Dave and I doing another episode of the live stream after all the technical issues last week. So again, apologize for that. Hopefully things are good. I've had a heck of a week with tech stuff and trying different things, but fingers crossed for now. So Dave, how you doing? And everyone in the chat, if everything sounds okay, let me know if there's any issue. Please let us know as well. But Dave, thanks for joining us.
Hello, hello. Can everybody hear me tonight? Did we get this worked out?
Do you have an echo in your ear, Dave? Or are you good?
Not yet.
Okay, let's keep it that way. Chat, let me know if we sound okay. It should be okay, but those are famous last words I've said before. So, chat, if you guys could let us know if Dave and myself sound fine. And let me just check the health of the stream. That all looks good. So yeah, if that all is taken care of and addressed, then we'll move on here and answer your questions, of course. So chat could let me know. That would help me out a lot, and we can kind of proceed here. Dream Bunny says sounds good. Just want to make sure everyone else agrees, and if so, we'll get started. Alex has a little echo. Says Steelers freak.
Echo or just distant?
He says echo. Mike says sounds good. Sounds good. Sounds good enough, I guess. We'll take it. We're not going to spend too much time. Slight echo on Alex, slightly off. Well, I don't know what that one's about. I have no idea why I would be echoey.
Yeah, I'm not hearing an echo on my end here.
There's no reason why there shouldn't be an echo. There's no other audio. Well, let's just power through. I guess it's good enough here, and I'll have to figure it out next time. All right, we'll start here. As always, you guys can send your questions, and Dave and I will answer them. If you want to move to the front of the line and have your question be guaranteed to be asked and answered, you can send us a super chat, and we'd appreciate that. Certainly, no obligation to do that, but that is another thing you can do to support the stream. Why does it keep? It's going to bug me with the echo. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but I have no idea why there would be any sort of an echo.
Are the people that are saying echo, are you sure it's just not a little distant, like he's in a large room or something?
Yeah, but it should still sound okay comparatively. Hold on. Does this sound any better to anybody? Test 1, test 2, test 1, test 2. Okay, well, Mike says an echo, not an echo, but slight distant. Hold on, let me see if my mic's picking up.
Yeah, they're saying larger room sound here, which is what I told you ahead of time there. So you should be good to go, Alex.
All right.
For this one.
Yeah.
Alex has a new mic coming, so hopefully we'll square this away.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the questions here. Enough of all that. Appreciate your guys' patience. Jason is here. Says, greetings and salutations, loosely translated into what's good for. Hope y'all having a black and gold day. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate that. Mike Deso starts us off with our first question. Says, Lario will be in sub package, not much in base. They use base less than sub. Is there any concern with that contract in correlation to usage? How many snap sacks would make it a good deal? It's really hard to put a number on that. It's really about the quality of play, Mike. But I don't have a real big concern about what you're referencing in the sub versus base world of it all.
Yeah, and the other thing too, we don't really know yet what the base value of that contract is. I was hoping it would hit the NFLPA on Monday morning, but it did not. So we obviously know what the up to amount is, but we don't know what the incentives are in that. Probably playtime incentives, but we don't know what those are. We don't know what the base value of the deal is, so we can't speak on that end until we get those numbers. Will I get them Yeah, I would like to think that I thought it happened by Monday morning. I didn't. We'll see if it hits the NFLPA in the morning or by Wednesday. But if you go back and you kind of look since he entered the league, at his total snap numbers, let's see, 2018, Larry O played 930 total snaps that year for the Browns in 2018, which was his second year in the league. The previous three seasons, the two with the Browns, and then obviously last year with the Bengals, right at the same amount of snaps for him: 779 in 2019, 747 in 2020, and 752 last year with the Bengals. Now, obviously, he did suffer that I think they call it a. I don't know if they know for sure what the injury is. It's just what's being reported out there. Dr. Mel, I think, is trying to drill this down further there, but I think they're calling it a Liz Frank joint
Mm.
injury that he had to have surgery on. But I would like to think that around 700 snaps would be the max that we would potentially see Larry Ogunjobi play. As soon as he was signed, sort of in my head, I was thinking like 550 or 600, right around in there. Now, will he see time in base? I think so. Will he see time in sub package? I really think so, because he's good at getting after the passer and all. So it might be a mix of both. But my greatest hope when it comes to Larry O and his addition is, and especially if this team winds up, of course, they would still only dress probably about 5 defensive linemen on game days. It's yet to be seen if they'll keep 7 in total. Is that maybe we'll see a little bit more rotation, just in the fact of, I'd really like to start seeing Cam Hayward maybe getting a couple extra snaps off a game, if at all possible. Now, obviously, that wasn't possible due to all the injuries last year and all. But I think you'll see Larry Ogunjobi out there in both base and sub package situations. I would think that the cap on him would be around 700 or so snaps.
Right. No, I agree with you there. I think he's best in that sub package role, but they're going to mix and match, and he certainly could play in base. Do I happen to sound any better by any chance from where I did a second ago? Or no, Dave?
Sounds the same to me.
Sounds the same. Okay, never mind then. Anyway, but yeah, I agree with you there. Mutated Genome, good to hear from you. Actually, there's a super chat I want to get to first from Dream Bunny, $5 super chat. Thank you so much. Says, what are the most surprising differences thus far between Khan and Colbert? It's still pretty early, but we've already kind of seen some of those signs. I'd probably say the incentive-based structure of Ogunjobi's deal is the most surprising thing, but I think already you're seeing some subtle but crucial differences between Khan and Colbert, Dave.
Yeah, look, I mean, starting off with the Minka deal, getting done on June 15th and not, August 30th, or at least after they reported to camp. That was one of the first notable differences within there. And then, fast forward to the Larry Ogunjobi deal. I was surprised that it was a 1-year deal. I thought that would be something that Larry would be angling for on his end, because obviously the time it took for him to get signed, you had to think that his market value decreased some from what he was getting offered earlier in the offseason from Chicago Bears on that 3-year deal. So I thought the moment that I heard that he was coming in for a visit, I thought, I bet he's going to be angling for a 1-year deal. And then, traditionally what we've seen with under Kevin Colbert is those guys that around that, $4 million per year or higher mark. Colbert's generally tried to sign those guys to longer than 1-year deals. So he was signed to a 1-year deal. So that was a surprise. And then not only that, and once again, we don't know what the incentives are yet, but it is some sort of incentive-based deal for him with an up to amount attached. Now, obviously, they did that when Mitch Trubisky earlier in the offseason, but with him being a quarterback, that's not too far of a stretch. Obviously, the Steelers haven't had to go that route with a quarterback in a while.
Right.
Maybe this way of Omar doing business is maybe somewhat related to this team having a lot more cap space to work with this offseason, not having the franchise quarterback deal to work around. However, you do, as of last summer, you do have that quarterback like contract, I guess you could call it, with TJ Watt there. So, look, we're still in early stages of this. I don't know what more, what kind of surprises there are going forward, and this is all going to be new to us, because we're so
Right.
used to tracking Kevin Colbert for so long and getting his patterns and the way that he does things. Does this maybe mean that fast forwarding to next offseason in free agency, do we maybe see the Steelers get a little bit more competitive maybe when it comes to some of those players and doing more of these up to deals and incentive based deals moving forward? Over the years during Kevin Colbert, there was a long list of players that came in for visits at one time or another that didn't sign.
Mm-hmm.
And did they not sign because Colbert and company were pretty strict at wanting more than a 1-year deal for those players? Maybe they didn't sign because they were looking for up to tight deals and all like that. So those are just, as Alex said, we're still very, very early in the process here, but those are just those little changes or little things that I've said, with Fitzpatrick and the Ogunjobi deal alone. Those two things really stick out like a sore thumb.
Last time I'm going to ask, I promise. Does this sound
Oh, that
better? This
sounds a
should
lot
sound
better.
better. Ever chat, I
That's
assume this sounds a lot better. Yes?
Yeah,
Okay.
that sounds great.
I had unplugged. Anyway, no one cares about the reason why, but as long as it's fixed and chat lets me know, which I assume it is, and it sounds already better to my own head. So there we go. All right, now I don't have to. My technical issues are like your salary cap stuff. When something's slightly off, I'm just gonna spend the next 3 days trying to figure it out. So I'm
Well,
glad we could
whatever
do
you
that.
did, write it down.
Yeah, my mic wasn't plugged in well enough. I had unplugged it for reasons, and then I plugged it back in, but not securely, and so that's the reason. All right, but yeah, as you said, getting Minka done, getting any, you knew the Minka deal was going to get done, but the fact you can get it done earlier is always better than, of course, waiting and the questions and the hold in and any rumblings about, oh, is that holding going to affect him? Is that going to create injury issues? Is that what caused TJ Watt's problems last year? Probably not, but that question's going to exist. But with Khan, how he handles what you see on screen right now, the Diontae Johnson deal, that's going to be really interesting. And that was a debate that Jonathan Heitritter and myself had this morning on Steelers Depot. And I'll pose the question to you guys in the chat. I know you guys talk about it about every time we do one of these live streams. Inevitably, the conversation turns in this direction. But should the Steelers pay Diontae Johnson? Jonathan argues that the Steelers should not pay Diontae Johnson, while I argue the Steelers should pay Diontae Johnson. So you guys can give me your thoughts. What side of the fence do you come in the chat below? Next question comes from Carl Ward. Do you need a ticket to get into the Steelers Friday night light practice? Don't see those available. And would you have any tips for a fan who is going to training camp for the first time? You will need a ticket, Carl, at least I assume. I think that actually you have to pay money for. The other St. Vincent College ones are free. And so I'm guessing that's why they haven't done them online yet. I don't entirely know, but I don't have a ticket currently for their Friday night lights practice. But you will need to get tickets for all the other ones and presumably that one as well. But the SVC ones can be bought on Ticketmaster. In terms of tips for a first time fan, well, congrats. Very happy they're back in Latrobe this year. I would say get there pretty early, especially if you do want to try to get an autograph for you or a kid or something like that. Earlier the better. Watch the weather. It's going to get really hot out there on days where it's going to be sunny, not a ton of shade to really protect you guys. But yeah, bring some water, check the weather, get there early, and have a good time. It's a lot of fun. So hopefully you can make it out there, Carl. Now, let's see. Next question comes from Mutated Genome. Is the league going to allow the expanded practice squad, vets signed in the practice squad, and protected players on practice squad this season? The practice squad will remain at 16. It's up to, I think, 6 veterans allowed on the practice squad. So I think those are all the same as last year. I am not sure on the protected player status. I'm going to guess they'll stay, but I don't know that to be a fact. I don't know if you have insight there, Dave.
Yeah, I don't know if I remember seeing anything on that as far as the protected players go. I would think because they're carrying over the thing, the 16 amount and all. I would think, but I don't remember specifically uh, seeing that or not. So my best answer was I don't know as far as for sure as far as that end of it goes. I would have to research that.
Andrew Villat, who's going to be the starting quarterback after Halloween? I wish I had that kind of scary looking crystal ball, Andrew. Trubisky, I think, will be the starter week one, although I don't want to. I think some people are just already writing that in pen that Trubisky will be the starter. And if the season began today, I think he would be as well. But you're going to have an entire summer and 18 training camp practices, plus the other non camp practices, plus 3 preseason games to figure all this out. So I don't like people that seem to be cementing this one in Trubisky's favor right away. So I'm just really focused on week one, and then whoever starts, obviously, let's presume it's Trubisky. How his play looks will determine how long he can start for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, if he does end up being the starter, talking about Trubisky, man, as we've mentioned several times already, since this 2022 schedule was released, man, it's tough sledding for them, in these first 6 games, or yeah, 6 games specifically. You go Bengals, Patriots, Browns, Jets obviously doesn't look tough on paper, but second year head coach there. Bills in week 5 obviously be a tough one, and the Buccaneers in week 6. So if Trubisky does wind up being the starter, how the Steelers fare in those first 6 games. If they're in if they're in it still, 500 or better, and Trubisky's interception to touchdown rate is decent and all, I would think he would continue. But if they are sitting there at those first 6 games and it's not looking good and the tape's not looking good, the bye week's in week 9, right? So maybe that's kind of, I know the chatter just said come Halloween. That's a good point, because October 30th it would be their eighth game
Mm.
against the Eagles, and then you had the bye week. So if a change was probably going to come, that that might be about around the time they're ahead of that game against the Saints.
And frankly, this is all uncharted territory, and obviously that's a pretty obvious statement to make, but we don't know what the leash is for a Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback, because it was
No.
Ben, and Ben played until he couldn't play, and sometimes he still played after that. And so in 04, whenever he came in and replaced Maddox, it was because of injury, because that was necessary, and that wasn't even Mike Tomlin, of course. So we really don't know what the litmus test and the bar is going to be. I mean, just because the team is bad, does that mean Trubisky will get benched? It's probably less of a question of that and more about it's probably that's part of the equation, but also is Pickett ready? If he's not ready and the team is bad, they're still going to go with Trubisky, because you're not going to turn to a guy who's not ready on a bad team as well, or a team that's not winning a lot of games. So we really there's so many variables there that it's almost impossible to answer.
Fluid.
Mm. You, you're more concise than I am, so that's a good word there. It's a very fluid situation.
I like short words.
LV, before Larry Ogunjobi was signed, what would you say is the most solid position group, top to bottom? And then after we signed Larry, is it the D line or still no? I don't think that's the most solid. I think there's more depth there, and I do like the overall look. I think most people would probably go with the receiver room. The only thing I would caution there is just some of the uncertainty about Chase Claypool. We've had one really strong year, his rookie year, of course. One, I think it's a disappointing year. Some people, I think, have tried to change the narrative on that, and that's to each their own this past year. But there's a lot of guys that have to prove themselves. Claypool still needs to prove himself. And then, of course, the rookies, they look good on paper, but they get to take an NFL snap. So you can't assume anything there with George Pickens and Calvin Austin. So what would you say is the most solid room right now, Dave?
On the offensive side of football,
I think he says either side of the ball.
oh, the most solid side of the football right now, or position group, probably the defensive line right now.
Was it like
Uh,
that before the Ogunjobi signing, or did that move in the first
there,
place after?
there, it was up there. And obviously we're assuming we're going to get the Larry Ogunjobi pre that injury
Hmm.
last year, and that's a dangerous assumption. But it definitely moved in a lot more positive direction with him now in that room. Look, the inside linebacker room, it revolves around what is Devin Bush going to be this year? I mean, the starting outside linebackers are fine. It's just, man, you know, I just don't. And I've said this 100 times. I was a huge Jannard Avery fan of him coming out and all, but it was more as an off the ball guy. Him on the edge, he plays fine on the edge, I think, against a run, but he doesn't offer much in the way of as a pass rusher. I like him out in space and everything. Against a run looks good there, but how many are you going to make a concerted effort, or are they going to make a concerted effort, to maybe get Watt and Highsmith some snaps off the field, when they can there.
Right.
And even behind Avery right now, I mean, look, Tuzar Skipper, a lot of people obviously were excited about him his rookie season, that rookie preseason, and with good reason. But he's what here he is washed out and back to the Steelers on a minimum deal here. So what really can you have there? And obviously we don't know about the two undrafted guys yet until get on further into training camp and all. So back to the original question there, I would say defensive line is the strongest position group on this team right now. Maybe tight end.
I was
Second.
gonna say tight end. I was about to say, is that a take?
Uh, I think I think if you would have told me that would have been coming out of my mouth at the same time last year,
You would have said who's new to that group,
yeah,
who got
yeah,
drafted, who got signed.
because I mean Gentry really, really impressed me and others last year. I mean this time last year I was really wondering if Gentry was going to make it, and but he came on, and obviously I thought Fryermuth, who I had a third round grade on coming out, I thought he played like a second round grade. So if he continues to do that, and if Fryermuth takes the next step in progress for him, which a lot of that revolves around end of the line blocking, and if Gentry shows a little bit more improvement, that's not going to be a bad tight end room there.
I'm going to say tight end. I think you could argue D line, as you did, especially post Ogunjobi. I think you could argue receiver, but tight ends, those guys have done it in a Steelers uniform. Not for a terribly long time, but longer than a Pickens or longer than an Ogunjobi or what a Loudon or Leal could provide you in year two and year one, respectively. So and you don't have to be five deep at tight end. And even Kevin Rader's number three hypothetically. Connor Hayward technically a tight end. I'm going to say tight ends are the most solid group because I'm excited about Fryermuth in year two, and Gentry really took a big jump that he needed to take last year.
And kind of Gentry hinted to this earlier in the offseason here, and I'm really kind of looking forward to kind of seeing it. Are we going to see more two tight end personnel groupings, especially early in the year when the offense is probably still trying to find their footing a little bit and trying to bring these rookies up to speed and that kind of stuff, and try to lean a little bit more on that running game there. And obviously got a couple new pieces on that offensive line there. I'm kind of excited to looking forward at the potential of them maybe having two tight ends on the field more, at least in, let's say, like the first 5 or 6 games of the season.
I think so, and I think hopefully game circumstance because they played so much catch up last year because the first half offense was just by far the worst in football. But I will say, I think every number two tight end in football is telling reporters, I think we're going to run more two tight end sets this year. I think that's just the
Probably.
standard thing every one of those guys have to say. Maybe they're kind of trying to hope and wish that into existence. But I'm going to go tight
Well,
end to answer the question.
when you have red paint, you paint the barn red, right?
Right. Don't paint it, blue. Mutated Genome. Hello, Alex and Dave. Why won't they let Kevin Dotson compete for the starting right guard, his position in college, instead of left guard? A fair question, a fair critique. I've seen some of the O-line guys on Twitter, I think Brandon Thorne, Duke Manyweather talk about that, and that's fair. But at this point, Dotson is, year three? He spent the majority of his time at left guard. James Daniels played right guard last year, so do you want to switch those guys again? The guy that played left guard last year played right guard this year, and vice versa. There is a benefit to your quote unquote natural position, and Dotson probably is still more comfortable instinctively at right guard, but he's talked about how he does feel more comfortable at left guard now. So I think you just let everybody play the spot they played last year.
Hmm.
Is that where you're at as well?
Yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
didn't you say? I mean, I did a deep dive on James Daniels, but you went a lot deeper than I did. I mean, he's obviously played both guard spots in center. Isn't his best spot right guard?
I thought his best tape last year was, or his best tape of his career was last year, which came at right guard. He played. I think he was more of a center at Iowa, and then he started playing more guard in the NFL. But he played good ball last year. It's basically the main reason why you're signing him, because of his play last year. That was at right guard. You of course have a need at right guard. Don't overcomplicate it and leave Daniels at right guard. That's my stance. 007, this is a response to the question about paying Diontae Johnson. Sign him with conditions that affect his salary if balls are dropped in the playoffs. I promise you, he would never sign a deal with those kind of conditions. I don't think any player has anything like that except for maybe some really extreme circumstances.
Yeah, he's not gonna. His agent wouldn't let him sign a deal. Based on drops, right?
Yeah, and what is a drop? And that's a subjective term sometimes. So that's a whole can of worms there, messing with somebody's money like that. Scott Foradora says, "Doesn't it make sense that Kenny worked with the third stringers? I'm sick of the mainstream media basically saying him not winning the job in minicamp is somehow bad." I'm with you, Scott. I didn't pay it much mind. I expected Pickett to kind of run bottom tier, bottom rung during spring practice, because Pittsburgh still has that old school hierarchy of the veterans play, and the rookies have to earn it in most cases. Najee's an exception last year, but given the talent of that room, it was pretty obvious to know Harris was the guy out of the gate. So why even try to hide it or pretend that it wasn't the case? So yeah, I think the spring was for evaluation and install and learning. And it's not as much about trying to figure out who your week one quarterback's going to be. You're going to be in those situations more often next month in camp.
Hmm.
Let's see, Ethan Bowl, do you feel we have defensive sets with Casey at free safety while Minka plays dime or slot corner? Dave, I'll let you start this one off. So, will Casey play free safety with Minka playing kind of a different position? Is the question Ethan's asking.
I mean, I think you at some point during the season could see a few snaps like that. But let's face it, Minka loves being tied to the post. He can say whatever he wants to say in all these interviews about I'm comfortable moving all over. I'm not opposed to that. Yada yada. Minka loves playing the free safety position. Now, with that said, is it really, you still got to solve the battle first and foremost moving forward between Edmonds and Casey of who's going to be your strong safety in here. One would think the edge obviously would go to the kind of the incumbent, if you will, if it, in Edmonds there. But let's assume Edmonds wins a strong safety spot. What is the sub package going to look like? You're going to have a lot of different
Hmm.
options based on personnel, down, distance. Are you in nickel? Are you in dime? Those kind of things there. And Casey, I think if you look at kind of his past and all, this is a guy that seems to play better closer to the line of scrimmage than he does further away. He's, I think even the Cowboys used him some kind of like in a kind of a quasi linebacker role there. He can play in the slot. There's probably going to be a lot of mixing and matching going on with that. And because Casey is versatile. Yeah, I mean, we at some point during the season, assuming everybody stays healthy, we might see some snaps where Casey, is playing deep and Mika's down low against maybe a certain tight end or something along those lines there. But I don't think it's going to be a large percentage of snaps. Let's put it to you that way.
Sure, I think the short answer to that would be yes, but in the framework of Minka's still going to be the free safety in terms of that framework of the defense and how it's structured. And then your post snap rotations may have Minka drop down as that robber alert defender, or occasionally go over a slot against, a really good slot receiver, or number one who kicks inside, or a top tier tight end. And then Casey's going to spin and play free safety. I thought one underrated issue last year with Pittsburgh's defense, it was a bit more rigid for a variety of reasons. It was a younger group, a newer group. They lose Nelson, they lose Mike Hilton, but you didn't have a Cam Sutton who could spin and rotate with Minka as freely and as often on third down and sub package and dime defense, because he was your right cornerback and really didn't have that flexibility. Same with Mike Hilton, who did some of that, and then he was obviously gone. You were less apt to do some of that stuff with a Trey Norwood, with an Arthur Millette. guys like that. And so it kind of, I think, made Minka a little more static than what the team would have liked to have last year. So Norwood in year two, and then Casey, who can wear a lot of hats, can play slot, can play free safety. I think theoretically play strong safety, although I think Edmonds will be the starter out of the gate. I think that will create more versatility. So Minka's going to be the free safety. He's going to play that post safety a lot, but he's at his best when he can spin down and rob some underneath crossers. And a guy like Casey will give Pittsburgh the flexibility to more freely and more often, I think, move Minka around a little bit.
Obviously, it's later in the season this year, the two meetings with Baltimore, but you better, hopefully they're still in it, come that first. Better figure out something to do with Mark Andrews,
Right. Yeah.
a little bit different. Not, yeah, Miles Jack has coverage ability, but is that even a good matchup? If you ask, Miles Jack, to cover a guy like Mark Andrews.
The only time Pittsburgh figured out Mark Andrews last year was when Mark Andrews dropped like 4 passes in one game.
Mm.
That was the only way that Mark Andrews has stopped whenever he stopped himself. Mike Adesso, I'm seeing a lot of places projecting Najee as a top 5 fantasy football pick. Thoughts on that, Dave? Are you going to draft him on one of your 25 teams? I've kind of fallen a bit out of fantasy football. Jonathan, I think, talks about that a bit more. Um, I'd be comfortable taking Najee as a top 5 pick, though, given the volume of it, especially if you're in a PPR league. He's going to catch 50, 60, maybe 70 balls like he did last year, and that's going to create additional value. So, Dave, what's your thoughts on Najee in fantasy?
Yeah, look, I'm not going to lock in on him. Obviously, I don't go into any draft, locked in on it. It's all about the scoring and positional value and all like that, in my eyes. But I mean, if let's say it's a 12 team league and it's a point per reception or something along those lines, I mean, he's going to catch some balls again out of the backfield, no doubt about it. And the big question is how uh, uh, how can he do with about the same amount of touches versus total yardage over last year? Now, one would think that they've can it be as worse as
Hmm.
as last year? And uh, the answer to that's always yes, but you shudder to think how it would look on the field if it was worse than last year. Ideally, I mean, for the Steelers to have a good season, for the offense to hold up their end of the bargain in 2022, you would think Najee'd have to flirt with like I don't know what 1,800 total yards from scrimmage, something along those lines there, and he can catch 60, 70, even 80 balls out of the backfield. That's not the issue. What you don't get with Najee is obviously the explosive run type things. He's not the kind of back that I would bet on, delivering that 65-yard touchdown run for you.
Hmm.
That kind of thing there, the kind of what I would like to call bonus yards when you're especially talking about fantasy football running backs, and those kind of things. So, yeah, I mean, he's definitely going to be a first round guy in most fantasy leagues. I would be a little bit hesitant to maybe take him up in that top if I had like a top 5 pick, depending on how the board is. But somewhere 9, if he and if he felt like 10 or 11 to you in your fantasy draft, I wouldn't see an issue with that.
Yeah, I think I'd be okay taking him around that 5 to 6 range. Obviously, guys like Jonathan Taylor, I'd take Nick Chubb over Najee Harris from fantasy perspective. But I think safety is a careful and dangerous word to use in fantasy football. But I think in terms of Harris, there's really no threat aside from injury, which could happen to any running back. I mean, no one's gonna really eat into his carries, and the offense is going to be centered around Harris. Pittsburgh's openly admitted as such, and so I think you're going to have a lot of safety there. Like Harris is going to be the dude as long as he stays healthy. So I think around 5 to 6 is a good place to take Najee Harris. Next question comes from AJC. Is there any undrafted player this year you think might surprise people? I'm trying to think back to the list of names. It's become a less impressive crop of free agents in recent years, given the fact that Pittsburgh doesn't pay out the way other teams pay undrafted guys. I got to go with the running backs, though, whether that's
Yeah.
Jalen Warren or Mateo Durant. You see it on screen here. Joe Clark talking about that yesterday. There's opportunity there and there's talent there. And Durant's interesting because he's a different body type. He's smaller, faster, is a good receiving threat, has some really good pair of hands out of the backfield. Warren's a bit more the traditional, a little stockier than maybe Pittsburgh likes him, but has the overall size and competition profile. So just given the lack of depth behind Najee Harris, I think you have to go one of the running backs.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well too. I mean, you look up and down the rest of the undrafted guys here. Uh, what's going to happen with say between TD Moultrie and Tyree Johnson, as far as an edge guy goes, or either one of those two going to be able to give you anything during their rookie season?
Yeah, and I think you had spotted that Johnson missed some time. It appeared during the spring, which is never good for a rookie.
Yeah, just one photo though, so I don't know, how much
True.
and what it was related to or anything like that. But it was football and shorts. But within that, it was football and shorts, and you hope to keep those guys on the field, getting those reps and learning what they need to learn. So I mean, look, here we are exactly 1 month away from the start of training camp. We're going to learn a lot about a lot of these guys super quick, and especially with there only being 3 preseason games this year. I wish there was 4. I understand
Hmm.
why they don't have them and all like that, and but man, some of these guys aren't even going to get much of a chance to impress because you got to give your starters a certain amount of snaps.
Right. And there are
Especially
cut downs between those
right,
preseason games too, which is just dumb
right.
if you ask me.
Right. So some of these guys, we're not, we might see a large portion of play of them in one preseason game, and then that's it.
Right, right. So, yeah, I think those guys have been squeezed out, and that's sad, unfortunate, but that's the way the league is going. They care about the stars and not trying to find the future stars, if you ask me. John Pennington and Mike Adesso have a pretty similar question regarding the backup tackle situation. I'll read each individually and we can answer them collectively. John says, "Hello, Dave and Alex. Do you think the Steelers will bring in a left tackle to back up more?" And Mike says, "If a tackle gets hurt, is the plan really Joe Haig? What about his backup? Maybe bring Banner just for depth on a minimum deal. I know Banner's still trying to get healthy, and so that's kind of the first hurdle to cross, and I don't know his timetable on that. But short answer, I think Joe Haig's the backup guy. Now, maybe a cut down at the end of the summer could change things, and of course, injury and play during camp and preseason can alter things as well. But I think Joe Haig, veteran guy, versatile guy, has proven experience at both tackle spots. I think Pittsburgh, for better or for worse, is comfortable with that.
I mean, this could go any different way. I mean, this team has the cap space to do, whatever they want to do, really. So, uh, will we? I don't. I would bet against them doing anything between now and the start of training camp. But once you get past that, obviously anything can happen. But if I were to take a guess at it right now, I would think that what you see is what you get right now.
And I don't know what tackle you could bring in that's just sitting out there in late June. If you're a tackle that can stand up, you get signed because there's so much scarcity at the position. So I think you roll with what you have unless there is somebody who's cut. But again, what halfway decent tackles getting cut, you don't see that too often.
All right.
Let's see. Next question comes from Todd. Says, "Do you see both Connor Hayward and Derek Watt making the roster? Also, is it possible that Connor plays multiple positions?" I think yes to both. Now, to the first question, will they both make it? It's potentially either or, where one, Connor Hayward makes it, Watt doesn't, or vice versa. But I think it's also very probable and possible that both make it as well, especially if they're going to really truly define Connor Hayward as a tight end. Now, I think he's going to be an H back. He's not going to be a full time tight end if that is his role. Pittsburgh is not using him well because, to your second question, Todd, I think Connor Hayward's best value is his versatility, the ability to wear a lot of different hats. And if you just put him in a tight end bubble where he's not doesn't even have remotely close the size of an inline tight end, you're asking for trouble. So they should and they better, and I think they will play Hayward all over the offense.
I mean, it's still. I mean, here we are. June 27th. This it's very plausible that both Derek Watt and Connor Hayward make the 53. Obviously, for Connor is going and he should be able to do it. He's got to prove that he's a very valuable special teams player, and that that's going to be first and foremost there. Will it? will he serve as kind of that quasi number 3 tight end slash backup fullback slash emergency running back? I mean, he does have that versatility in his game. And then, obviously, if he did dress, you would expect that kind of player to be out there on all four special teams units. So it's just one of those several down the list things to pay attention to once training camp and the preseason gets underway. Because as we sit here right now, it is plausible that both those two could be on the 53.
I think and I hope all the questions you asked about Connor Hayward, they will be answered with the word yes. He should be all of those things because again, that versatility is what I think really got him drafted. Because if you put him into just one position, A, I don't know what position that is, and B, I don't think he's going to be that successful being just a X position kind of guy. He's got to really be able to move around to create the most value for him, and of course, be versatile and valuable on special teams as well. John Pennington, Dave, and Alex, what vets do you think will be on the bubble this year? Dave, I'll let you have first crack at what vets could be on the chopping block.
I mean, what are we defining?
Yeah, it's a pretty young team, so it's not a lot of obvious vets. I mean, Justin Lane was kind of the first name that comes to mind. I know he's not maybe thought of as a veteran, but he's a year 4 guy. To me, that's veteran status.
Yeah, look, I mean, are we talking about guys that most would have inside the bubble right now? I guess. I mean, because Carl Joseph, I wouldn't think a lot of people have Carl Joseph inside
Right.
the bubble right now. Alex and I talked the other day. And obviously, as I like to say, these things have a funny way of working themselves out. But I mean, if all these defensive linemen stay healthy, uh, is there an opportunity Montravius Adams, new contract and all, winds up on the outside? I think, I could see an instance where that happens. I don't think a lot of people have Anthony Miller as a
Right.
guaranteed inside the bubble. I mean, he's obviously, more veteran like, I guess you would say. So maybe that's somebody that makes somebody's list. Robert Spillane. I mean,
Mhm.
you wouldn't think that that's a guy, but I mean, uh, there's a lot of linebackers, lot of linebackers in that room trying to vie to do the things that Robert Spillane does, or does best. So, could Robert Spillane wind up being a quasi, I guess, surprise cut? I mean, yeah, I think he could be. I mean, right now, if I'm on a 53, I would have him, I think, inside the bubble on a 53. But I also probably wouldn't bet the house on that come week 1 of the season.
There will have to be some tough cuts in that off-ball linebacker room, whether it's Spillane, and I agree, I think he's much more inside the bubble than outside, but if Mark Robinson were to really just impress this team, you never know. What about a UG3? He's basically a veteran as well. So I think the names that we talked about, Lane, UG3, I think Anthony Miller, while he's not inside looking out, he's like just, I think, barely outside the roster looking in, but as about on the bubble as that question, I think, can be answered.
All right.
And let's see. It was Steelers Freak asked who is wearing the green dot. Do you think it'll be Miles Jack wearing the green dot for Pittsburgh?
I that would be my guess. Yeah, I think you just want Devin Bush to have to worry about playing this year.
Right, right. Ricardo Bonner, do you think Avery could provide depth at inside linebacker and we could look elsewhere for outside linebacker depth? This goes back to what Dave just talked about. I think they're going to take all these guys into camp and see what they have and evaluate from there. So I think Avery's going to get the best look at outside linebacker because depth is a lot thinner there. We just talked about the several inside guys they could, rotate in or have as backups behind Miles Jack and Devin Bush. So I think they're going to do their darndest to make Avery work on the edge.
I agree.
Skywalker, what standing will the Steelers end the season at? So asking for a record. I'm not
Too early for that.
ready for a record projection there, but Ross Swisher says 6-11. So there you go for an answer there. Lou Boy, how come no one is talking about Mason Cole? He protected better than Bradbury. That's the Garrett Bradbury up in Minnesota. That's a fair point. Do you think we're not talking about Mason Cole enough, Dave?
I think we're just talking about. Thank God it's not Kendrick Green.
It's a fair point. It's the old Eddie Murphy Ritz saltine bit.
Yeah. Look, you the center play should be better. Am I expecting Mason Cole to be a top 12, 13 center in the NFL based on his tape that I've watched? No, but he doesn't have to be a top 12 guy for this offensive line to turn things around collectively. I mean, this is really going to be a collective offering overall, and needs to be with this offensive line, this year. So, is he a guy that probably is falling underneath the radar when you talk about all the guys that the Steelers have signed this offseason? Sure, yes. So the answer to that would be, yeah, maybe people aren't talking enough about Mason Cole, but I mean, I think everybody came to the realization finally that something had to be done there, and Cole, was kind of a lower level kind of tier center free agent, if you will. So you just keep your fingers crossed and hope that he's marginally better than Kendrick Green was last year.
It is kind of crazy, and I think I'm remembering this correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dave. Cole was signed before James Daniels and signed, I think, on the very first day of free agency to a 3-year deal, which was surprising for certainly not one of the most marquee free agents on the market.
I don't remember how the timeline went there. They were real close together, though. Obviously.
They were the same week, but maybe you can look this up, or someone in the chat can jog my
Hold on.
memory. I want to say Cole was the very first day, not during the tampering period. It wasn't reported prior to then, but the first official day of the new league year and of free agency. I want to say Cole was signed to a 3-year deal, and 16 million, whatever he got.
Well, they have on the, now this might be the actual when they actually brought him in, but they have him on the Steelers transaction sheet as both on 317.
Okay, but I think it was reported prior to that.
Yeah,
agreed to.
Yeah,
I want to say that came first, and it was the first day of free agency, but it was still very early in the process. All that is to say, there was some interest there to really make that effort to improve the offensive line, and all I need Mason Cole to be is just averaged, even slightly below. If he's like the 16 to 20th best center in football, that's not ideal, of course, but I think you can live with it if the other pieces work out, and a lot of that can be argued as a big if, and I would likely agree. But if you just bring some stability and don't have as many valleys as Kendrick Green had in his very bumpy, expectedly rookie season, I'm good with that. As that bridge guy for a year or two, if Mason Cole can just be average to slightly below, I think you can make it work.
How many people right now, within 5 seconds, can name the starting center for the Los Angeles Rams last year?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not even sure if I could. It wasn't Austin Blythe. That guy's been gone for a little bit. Bryan Allen?
Brian Allen, yeah.
Okay, well, second try. But point taken. No, obviously in Pittsburgh,
and Brian Allen was former drafted fourth round out of Michigan State in 2018.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously in Pittsburgh, there's a rich tradition of great centers, and I think Pittsburgh, they never won a Super Bowl without a great center, I guess, huh? Or like a really good one.
Yeah.
But again, if you can just if the other pieces can't step up and Cole can just not be so inconsistent and have so many down moments like Kendrick Green had last year, if you get just more even play, even if it's not great play, I think you can make it work and you can live with that.
If Cole can just stay on his feet.
Yeah, right.
Because you're not going to block anybody when you're on the ground, and that was one of the big things that stuck out almost immediately early on in Kendrick Green's rookie season there. So this is a guy's experience, and Trubisky has talked already this offseason about the bond that those two, him and Cole, are developing, and that's always great to hear there. So you said it best. I mean, he doesn't have to be great. Now, this offensive line collectively needs to be good, but individually, Mason Cole does not need to be great.
And Bob is right. Justin Hartwig was the center in 08, so he's not one of those great ones. But that whole line was weird. It's like one with like Darnell Stapleton and Hartwig. That was a kind of a crazy exception. But fair point there, Bob. How good do you think Pittsburgh's O line needs to be? Can it be average overall, or does it need to be top 10 for this team to be competitive? Let's say.
Man, they probably better be collectively in the top half of the league as a run blocking team.
What are the odds they can actually get there? this year?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question.
Right, that might determine what
Because you
record
have,
you want to put him at.
I mean, you've got Dan Moore Jr. who was okay against the run last year. I mean, and then what? Who is Kevin Dotson? You know,
Mm,
who is he? Are we going to find out this year? Is he going to be that guy that maybe we thought he could be coming out of Louisiana Lafayette? The guy that we were screaming, oh man, they got a steal there, a combine snub. If he can be that guy, then obviously you're going to be in good shape there. James Daniels, if he plays at the level he played last season, going to be fine there. And then Chukwuma Okorafor on the other side. So I mean, look, this it's no secret what the secret is to a successful 2022 Steelers team. It's that the defense plays lights out and the offense does just enough, and a lot of that just enough is going to be, I think, revolved around the running game. At least early on in the season there. So I think this offensive line now to shoot, we need to say, wow, look what they did, as far as the upgrading to run blocking on this offensive line this year.
sure, the secret is very much the secret of last year. It's just probably a little bit more important this year because you don't have the Hall of Fame guy like Ben who can still kind of run the show whenever the chips are down and need a comeback, which happened so often last year. So that's what it comes down to, as you said, defense, keeping the score down, creating turnovers, splash plays, and a run game that is efficient, however you define that.
I mean, I think everybody agree that the expectations are that this offensive line would be better than the 2021 unit. But
We said that last year,
how
though.
but how much better?
Right.
And is that how much better enough? I mean, I can't sit here and answer that question right now. I really can't.
Right. Because they were about the worst in football last year. And if they're the 27th best unit this year, that's improvement, but it's not going to materially change this offense and the production or lack thereof. So that's what it comes down to, the X factor last year and the X factor this year and the X factor until it's no longer the X factor. State of the Steelers says, "Hey y'all, will y'all be out at training camp? This will be my first time out there. Any pointers or advice?" We will be. I just got all my tickets today. I think Dr. Mel will be there for a couple days, and I think Tim Rice will be there for a couple days, and probably some other people as well. May have already heard us answer this. We talked about it earlier with, I think Carl was his name. But make sure you get your tickets. You can get those on Ticketmaster. Get there early, check the weather, be prepared for any rain or extreme heat and all that kind of stuff, and get there early if you want autographs. Let's see, a couple more questions. This one's from Scott. Is it more likely that Mitch Trubisky starts and has a really good year, or that he's replaced by midseason? Because my heart tells me Mitch could surprise a lot of people and be a great story. I don't have a great feeling either way in terms of answering that question. I suppose it's more likely he gets replaced by midseason. I think we like to kind of tell ourselves sometimes because we have the rooting interest and a bit of the bias, which I'm not judging anyone for. I get it, every fan base has this, but like the guy that is the Steelers guy is going to turn out well. You can see and spin it into a positive direction, but Diontae Trubisky really having a giant career change, while not zero, I think he's in a better and more stable situation in Pittsburgh, but typically these guys don't have big career arcs in a big turnaround 180-degree direction like Trubisky might be based on the way you're answering that, Scott. So long story short, I think it's more likely that he's replaced midseason than having this really good bounce back campaign.
Yeah, but if I were to bet on it, I would bet that Trubisky would be replaced by, let's say, I don't know,
Halloween.
right after Halloween there.
Yeah.
Definitely by Thanksgiving.
I think the system's a good fit for him overall. But again, I think a lot of teams are trying to convince themselves, or a lot of fans trying to convince themselves that their quarterback's going to surprise everybody and we're going to shock the world. And sometimes that happens, but most of the time, if we're being honest, it does not. John, do you guys think any free agent offensive linemen have a chance to make the team or practice squad? I don't know if that means guys not currently on the team or guys they had signed. I assume it's the former. And that really is going to depend on injuries and can't play. There's always that chance, and practice squad certainly that opens that door up a lot more. But I'm not thinking about that stuff too much right now, John.
Yeah, I mean, it's plausible that someone from the outside could still be signed. I don't want to say it's that it's not going to happen, but as we had a question earlier tonight. There, I'm at least betting from now to the to the time camp starts, what you see is what you get on this roster right now.
Let's see. Couple more questions. This comes from Mike. Assuming Larry's cap hit is 4 to 6 million, we don't officially know any more numbers on Ogunjobi's deal besides the 8 million, correct?
Just the up to
Just
amount,
the up
and
to.
that there's incentives. And once again, I would like to think, I was hoping that the numbers would have hit this morning, but they didn't. I know that both his signing and the Pickett signing have already been turned into the NFL and we're on the transaction sheet late last week, and then it goes from there to the NFLPA to get registered that way. So by the morning, I'm hoping, by Wednesday at the latest, hopefully we'll have details on that.
Okay, but to finish out, Mike's question says, let's assume the cap hits 4 to 6 million. Boz comes to a wash this year. There is no TJ restructure. Wouldn't that only leave a few million to play with? I swear Dave said only 6 to 8 million before the Larry deal. I mean, I think it's basically what you've laid out. They're going to have a couple $1 million in usable cap space, correct?
Correct, but on top of it, what's going to happen to Mason Rudolph in that 3 million?
Right.
What's going to happen with the and here's something else. I don't want to alarm people right now, but it's been something that's been keeping me up at night. There's an unexplained $3.5 million charge out there for the Steelers right now. In other words, what the Steelers are showing this team has in cap space prior to the Pickett and Larry Ogunjobi signing versus what what the NFLPA versus what I have right now is $3.5 million to the wrong direction there, and this happened right after the Minka contract hit. So one of the things I'm wading through this week and going to get with Joel Corey hopefully in the morning on is, was there a $3.5 million roster bonus out there with Minka Fitzpatrick that did not get reported, that maybe they intend on turning that thing into a signing bonus once it matures or before it matures? I don't know, but I can tell you right now that my numbers are $3.5 million off in the wrong direction, and you guys know how meticulous I am at tracking this. So this is something that for the last 3 or 4 days since the Minka contract hit the NFLPA that I'm trying to solve, that I have yet to solve. At first, I thought maybe maybe a DeCastro kind of injury
Grievance, right?
grievance or something like that. But the more I researched into that, it's very unlikely that it's that. So I don't know what it is. I'm going to find. I'm obviously going to find out. But that might be even 3.5 million more. And obviously, if it is related to a roster bonus to Minka, they could obviously, before that thing comes due, they could turn that thing into a signing bonus and clear some space as well too. So I'm just going to have to smoke this thing out here over the next couple of days and try to find out what what's up with that. But and if indeed, what is the we don't know for sure what the base value is, what the actual cap charge is going to be for Larry Ogunjobi either. And if you're talking about an up to $8 million deal, I would like to think a good portion of that's probably, likely to be earned, meaning it will count against the cap this year, and thus higher
Right.
than the $3.5-4 million.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Even if the incentives make up a portion of the deal, and they obviously do, if they're likely to be earned, if they were earned or would have been earned last year, they're going to go into this year's, salary cap accounting. So, it's not like it's this will it won't it. It's going to be counted against this year's cap. Bob is asking, could that 3.5 million number have anything to do with Stephon Tuitt in his retirement?
No, because that already previously hit the cap and the displacement and all like that, like 5 or 6 days after his release, because the Steelers had a net the net impact to that was 8.155 million when you subtract out the player that displaced him in the top 51 roster at the time there. So it should not be anything related to it. Now if Tuitt was to fight, but Tuitt, here's the thing: Tuitt uh, went to the reserve retired list. Now, I suppose, and it has crossed my mind, you know, might there be an injury grievance there? But one thing I did learn a part of just this recent research here is you generally, if an injury grievance is going to be until it gets settled, it's going to be count 40% of what the player's cap number or what the player was scheduled to earn in that year has to hit the cap until the grievance is settled. Now, the 40% number wouldn't, the 3.5 million wouldn't match the 40% of what Tuitt was scheduled to earn.
Right.
So that's why I would say that's probably not related to Tuitt.
Didn't you say it matches the Castro's number though?
Yeah, it does. It matches DeCastro's number to the T because DeCastro was set to earn what, 8.75, and if you take 8.75 times 0.4, that is 3.5.
So that's circumstantial, but that feels like that might be it, unless it's that Minka something in
Yeah,
there.
but like I said, the further and the more, I've talked to several other guys that I know that kind of cap up on the capping as well too. Normally that stuff has to be, a grievance has to be filed in with the first, I don't know, 25 days or
But
something.
how long does it take for it to actually be resolved? Filing is one thing, resolving
Right,
it is another.
right. But when it does, when the grievance is initially filed, the NFLPA placeholds that against the
Oh,
cap.
I see. So you would have seen that within 25 days of his release last year.
Yeah.
Okay. That's weird that it still matches up so perfectly, though.
Yeah, that's what took me down a 2 hour rabbit hole. Probably
Yeah.
longer than that.
Well, we'll see. We'll keep you posted on that for sure. But that's kind of the salary cap update there. Bob also wanted to mention John LeGlue as somebody that shouldn't be forgotten about in this offensive line room, who showed a lot of versatility and pounced on the opportunity last year as Pittsburgh was down to their fifth string left guard. Don't think his actual play was all that impressive, but for a first time out, pretty good feel good story there, and could compete as a versatile backup who can play basically anything but left tackle. So that's going to bring him a lot of value to this team.
Right. He's got value, just as there going to be enough spots to go around,
Right. Practice squad should be a good bet for him at worst. So I think that will wrap up today's stream. I don't believe there are any more questions. A big debate about Cincinnati versus Pittsburgh going on in the chat, but we'll let you guys hash that one out here in the chat there. But I think that's gonna wrap things up. Let me see if there's something that I might have missed. Nope, I think that is everything. So appreciate you guys being here. I think because our normal schedule is supposed to be doing one for next week too, I don't want to stray away from that. So Dave, if that's good with you, let's do a
Yeah.
stream next
Yeah.
Monday as well, and then we'll be off the Monday after that and kind of get back into our regular routine and rhythm. This was kind of the makeup live stream from last week's issue. So appreciate you guys being here, and Dave, as always, thanks for being here as well. We'll do the podcast tomorrow and we'll recap the last couple of days.
Yeah, and hopefully by next Monday I'll have all the answers on the salary caps and give a more complete picture of what's up with that after I research some of these things. So peace and love, everybody. Thank you for joining us
Yep.
tonight.
Looking forward to that. Thank you guys for being here. Be sure to like this video and also subscribe to the channel as well. And check out Steelers Depot. A lot of cool stuff here to get you through the off season. So appreciate you guys watching, and we'll talk to you soon.